The Wake Up Call with Anna Cookson. BBC.
So 38 bills, new laws, all in all were put forward by the government, a giant to-do list, if you like, for the next year. There was a promise to help people with the cost of living, but no actual money or targeted support, with opposition parties claiming ministers are not up to the task of growing the economy. Well, let's discuss this now with Damien Green, the Conservative MP for Ashford, and Karen Constantine, Labour County Councillor from Ramsgate. Thank you both for joining us this morning. If I may, I'll start with you, Karen. What did you make of the speech? Of course, it started with the priority, which was to help people with the cost of living. And did you feel there was enough in there for you?
No, I think that this absolutely failed to address those issues. And I think it's really exposed that really the lack of vision and the lack of care in this government and their lack of will to actually to start to tackle things. When you think about the fact that there are 13.3 million people now living in poverty, when you think about this cost of living crisis and the way in which bills are predicted to go up and inflation is going to rise from 7% to 10%, all of these things are going to have a significant impact. And we've seen, especially in places like Thanet, in poorer places, we've seen people struggling for many years. And now that struggle is creeping out across our community, and very many people are really feeling this and are really concerned. So despite the fact that we were told this was going to ease the cost of living, it's done anything but. And it is failing completely to deal with the issues that big business are talking about. They want to be able to move forward. They want to be able to invest. They want to be able to grow, but this government is holding them back.
Specifically, Karen, what did you want to hear in the speech? Details. What plans did you want to hear about the cost of living?
I wanted more support for people. I mean, I wanted I wanted something on the windfall tax, which has kind of got universal agreement, really, and which would ease the problem, especially, the cost of energy, etc. That would have been good. I was very disappointed not to see a mental health reform bill, which has been promised for many years. And you'll note that Theresa May was highly critical of her own party on that particular issue. There was just nothing in here to stop poverty growing. And when poverty grows, people become depressed, they become ill. It becomes a long-term issue to turn them around, to enable them to have the good, positive lives that they deserve to have. There was nothing really on planning. There was nothing really to address the social housing crisis. I mean, we're just not moving forward. We are moving backwards. When I first came into politics in the 80s, this was the situation then, and we have gone back and right back, and that really worries me. And it's not just me and the politicians that are worried. This is the talk on the street. This is the conversations that people are having, in the street, in the supermarkets, etc. People are very worried about what's happening, and they do not know how they're going to cope. And the government have not addressed that.
Okay.
And that's why there's a call for a state of an emergency budget, which I now support, actually.
Interesting stuff, isn't Karen? Thank you for that. So let's give Damien Green a chance to respond. As I mentioned, he is the Conservative MP for Ashford, former Cabinet Minister as well. So, Damien, Karen says you failed. There's a lack of vision on poverty. A lot of people are actually saying this yesterday, that there just wasn't the detail in there to help with the cost of living.
Well, the detail in there to help directly with the cost of living is a line that everyone ignores in every Queen's speech, which is that basically there will be a finance bill, there will be a budget. That's what will very directly deal with the issue, the perfectly serious issue of inflation and what that does to people's household budgets. So I'm very much in favour of support measures coming forward in the budget, which I assume we'll get in the early autumn. So that covers that point. And of the other things that in the bill and the Queen's speech that will help over time, there'll be a lot of stuff on deregulation. I'm surprised Karen said there was nothing about planning. There is. The Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill is very specifically partly a planning bill, and indeed that's being unveiled today to show that it is at the heart of the government's policy.
It's true, but it's not the full one we were expecting, is it?
Yeah, well, yes, it is. I mean, we were told that the planning bill is being wrapped up in that, so there will be radical planning proposals in that. But I think on the main issue, which I absolutely agree is of course the cost of living and how we combat it. The government's already spent £22 billion supporting people. I agree that there needs to be more support. and that will come in the budget. So I think to say that the Queen's Speech has got 38 bills in it, but none of them are about inflation. You can't pass a bill that says the abolition of inflation bill. If it was that simple, every government would do that every year. Yeah, but,
OK, I'm going to let Karen respond to that in just a moment. But first of all, about more support in the autumn, that's interesting because Boris Johnson seemed to be saying, actually, the way I think I can fix this crisis is by sorting out the economy. He used the words, turbocharging, firing up, whatever he said. So he seems to be thinking that actually he's going to do it another way rather than handouts. What do you think your party is going to do?
Well, you need to do both. I think the handouts are. I would prefer to do it through tax cuts. I think that would help more people and also make the economy more efficient and would actually be less inflationary. And the problem of just pouring out more and more public money is that makes the inflation crisis worse. So you don't want to do that. But at the same time as having that immediate relief, you need to have a dynamic economy. And a lot of the bills in this Queen's Speech are about deregulating, making the economy more efficient, making business have fewer burdens so that it can carry on creating the jobs that we all want to see. One of the great successes of our economy is how people were predicting that we'd come out of the pandemic with 10% unemployment. Actually, unemployment is less than 4%. That's millions of people, millions of families that have got an income coming in that people predicted wouldn't happen. And we've absolutely got to preserve that kind of dynamic job creation for the future.
OK, let's turn back to Karen now. So Damien was saying there will be more on the economy in the autumn when the budget is delivered. And of course, the government has already given £22 billion worth of support.
I think that's the thing with this government. They always kick the can down the road. It's always a case of things will improve at some point in the future. And that doesn't seem to ever really materialise from my point of view. I think you've got to think about what the director of the CBI is saying, that he's warning the government that they're not investing in growth, that they're not investing in clean energy, they're not investing in digital businesses, they're not priming the economy. So frankly, even if more jobs are created, and even with the new national minimum wage, if the cost of living outstrips what people can earn, we're still in a crisis. And that is exactly what's happening. And when you think you've got charities warning that now millions of adults can't afford to eat every day, and you've got 1.5 million people living in a state of emergency, you can really see very clearly and very quickly that if the government doesn't tackle the cost of living crisis, we are going to have an economy that tanks. And if we have an economy that tanks, it's going to be so difficult and so much more costly to dig our way out of that. And this government are deliberately and willfully ignorant to people's genuine needs. OK.
Damien, are you deliberately ignoring people's needs?
No, absolutely not. I mean, that's a ridiculous accusation that the government, ministers in the government spend a huge amount of time discussing this issue and deciding on how best to deal with it. And as I say, there's already been a significant amount of help. There's a global inflation crisis, which this government has to deal with, along with other governments around the world. It's the way you deal with it that will matter in the long term. And as far as I can see, the Labour Party just says, well, we'll have a windfall tax, as though that would solve the problem. Of course, it wouldn't. It would be a one-off. If all you're doing is the government spending more and more money, then what you will do is make inflation worse and last longer. So it's the way you help people through this difficult period that matters for the long term. And as I say, I'm arguing for tax cuts as a way to help people, to allow them to keep more of their own money so they can find it easier to pay the bills. And I hope to see that in the budget.
Interesting stuff. Listen, both of you, thank you so very much for a very respectful debate this morning. I'm sure we'll talk again on the cost of living very, very soon. That was then Damien Green, MP for Ashford, former Cabinet Minister as well, alongside Karen Constantine, a Labour County Councillor for Ramsgate.